Titans, go!
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in Doom Manor once again, ready to talk Doom Patrol Season 2. And I'm joined once again by my wonderful co-host and fellow X-File, that's a Phile, by the way, DJ Nick. How you doing?
Hey, Charles, I'm doing wonderful. And yes, indeed, big X-Files fan for sure. I've been actually rewatching the series as Prime Video was kind enough to give us the whole show on Prime Video. So I'm just devouring that in between, of course, watching Doom Patrol, naturally.
Nice. So I shouldn't bring up that I have all the Blu-rays.
No, you probably shouldn't. Because they might mysteriously disappear from your house. Some men in black might come around and take them.
Yeah, or like the cigarette smoking man. Wait, you're the cigarette smoking man.
There you go.
All right. But this is not the X-Files podcast, guys. So this is Titan Talk. So to here today, at episode 55, we're going to be talking Finger Patrol, which kind of sounds like you're getting a rather awkward physical. But...
Or a V for Vendetta reference, as in the finger.
Oh, I did not catch that. You're absolutely right. There's that possibility as well. So this was the 5th episode of Doom Patrol Season 2, aired a few weeks back on July 9th, 2020, written by Chris Dingus, who co-wrote the episodes Cult Patrol, which introduced a certain Willoughby Kipling, and also Penultimate Patrol, from Season 1, and also co-writer Shoshana Shachi, who wrote some episodes, who's been a very popular writer on Doom Patrol, just to name a few episodes: Cyborg Patrol, Ezekiel Patrol, the Season 1 finale, and Fun Size Patrol from Season 2. And this one directed by Glenn Winter, who directed the Doom Patrol pilot from Season 1. And obviously, because this is a very special effects heavy episode, especially at the end, which we're going to talk about. So it should be a lot of fun. And Nick, what did you make of this one? Before we get into some trivia, a little bit of trivia that I have. This one was, I think, a lot of fun, especially, obviously we're going to talk about it, the Steel and Stone.
Of course. Possible spin-off.
Dream sequence, I guess you want to call, or imaginary dream sequence that Cliff does. So what did you make of this episode in general before we get going?
I think this was another great episode because just like the previous one that we discussed, it had a little bit of everything because we had a little bit of levity, of course, but there was also a lot of depth in it. That cliffhanger at the end, oh my, it was just amazing. And of course, the fact that this potential spin-off that we could get, it probably will not be a thing, but people, of course, are hoping here that it might be a thing eventually.
I was certainly lobbying for it on Twitter, if you recall.
Yes, indeed, I do.
And like I told you before the podcast, before we got going, was that Shoshana Sachi liked my tweet about their needing a Steel and Stone spinoff as of yesterday because it was so cool, and so it was very nice, and hopefully she's listening to the podcast. Fingers crossed for that.
Well, you know what? You have clout in podcast land, Charles. So you know what? You are one of those kind of people that they will check out. So if if folks like you say, Miss Sachi will probably say, it might actually be a good idea if Charles Skaggs says so.
I like the way you think, sir, even though I think you're completely 100% wrong about that. But I should make you my agent, I think. I don't know, but
I do promote artists, so there you go.
well, I appreciate that. Thank you. So you're good at buttering people up. I'll keep that in mind. All right. So yeah, I thought this was a great episode. Very interesting to see, and we'll talk more about this, but Baby Doll paired with Dorothy for a good portion of the episode.
That was a very curious moment, I will say, and we will, of course, enlarge upon that. But go ahead, Charles.
No, that's you're fine. But hey, this is what we do, and we interrupt each other. That's what we're professionals at it. So, seeing these two characters together, just two characters that you wouldn't have thought to put together, and so it's a credit to the writers, and it actually serves a purpose in this story, because it escalates the Candlemaker subplot and basically ratcheting up the tension level as we get closer and closer to the Candlemaker being the season 2 big bad.
And I think it also kind of gives us maybe almost a little bit more of Dorothy's dark side, of what she could become as things progress, and as she's not maybe given the attention that she's supposed to be given, and the fact of of having been so repressed.
Right.
I think it's starting to bubble up to the surface. So there is definitely that as well. In fact, I almost did not recognize Dorothy in that moment. I'm like, oh my, she's seriously doing a 180 here, and this is not the sweet little girl that we used to know, as it were.
Well, I mean, just last episode when we talked about Sex Patrol, Dorothy was so sweet, and you felt bad for her because of how Niles was treating her and whatnot. And, here in this episode, and credit to Abigail Shapiro, and we'll talk more, but, she showed some range here, I think, especially with Dorothy. It showed that little darker side. And we kind of see how much the Candlemaker has his hooks into Dorothy, I think.
Oh, yes. I totally agree with you. And I think, kudos definitely to her. I mean, for being, a 20-year-old, granted, some people in the Hollywood world or in the acting world will say 20 is you're already in your prime and you're getting old, as it were. But I really think she definitely has range and definitely has potential. And I hope that maybe her musical career will not keep her away from doing more on-screen acting, because she definitely has the chops. We talked about, Crazy Jane and what an incredible actress Diane Guerrero is. And I think we have another great one here. The casting, whoever is in charge of the casting is definitely knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Rappaport Casting that does the casting for a lot of the Arrowverse shows. But yeah, you're right. Whoever's making the casting decisions, I mean, I'm sure it's in the credits. I just haven't bothered to look. But
I'm sorry, casting person.
Yeah, exactly. Apologies to the casting department at Doom Patrol, but yeah, they're doing a spectacular job. And I think just kind of like how season 1, I think, showcased Diane Guerrero's talents. This season 2 is really showcasing Abigail Shapiro, who hadn't had a lot of credits before this, but apart from like theater and whatnot. So I think this is going to put her on a lot of people's radar going forward.
I certainly hope so. Because we talked about like Diane Guerrero potentially becoming, the Green Lantern.
Jessica Cruz, yeah. And so, I'm all for that. I love that idea because she's. And once again here, Diane Guerrero turns in a fantastic performance, I think.
Wonderful. Yeah. And of course, we will deeper dive to it.
I know, we're just so eager to talk about this.
Exactly, but it sounds like, before we even open the box, we're already excited about, the packaging, as it were.
Exactly. We just can't wait to talk about it, which is a good sign for an episode, I think. I would think. Some trivia I wanted to mention really quickly. So the bit where Larry comes across the Russian dolls. The dolls that kind of fit within.
Matryoshka.
Yes,
called.
exactly. Yeah, I know they had an official name for that, but generally here in the States we just call them Russian dolls. But yes, they do have that name. Where they're just it was something that Grant Morrison actually introduced. So it's an homage to Grant Morrison's depiction of Negative Man, because in the comics, Morrison essentially had Larry fuse with a woman named Dr. Eleanor Poole, and he became this hermaphroditic version of Negative Man called Rebus, who was a very extremely enigmatic character. And one of the things that was a way to kind of give Rebus a little more characterization was I should say they developed an interest in these Russian dolls, the Matryoshka dolls. And because it was essentially like a symbol, like symbolism for like a person within a person within a person within a person. All these layers.
The Matryoshka in general is just there are many layers to a person. I mean, because you know what? Just to go on a brief tangent here, having Latvian heritage, and of course Latvia used to be part of Russia.
Right.
It is a big part of that heritage of the symbolism is that there's just multiple layers to a person.
Right.
And that's how, and we actually have some of those around the house because they were actually passed down throughout our family. So yeah,
that's cool.
You have it spot on there.
Excellent. All right. So yeah, and it's almost this kind of like almost like a never-ending cycle. Like you keep peeling back layers. So that was supposed to represent what Rebus was, and so it was kind of nice to see that homaged here in this episode, and also gives you a little room for speculation. Well, like, are they going to do more with Negative Man? Are they going to make Negative Man Rebus down the road? Who knows? Possibly. I guess it all depends if Doom Patrol gets season 3, right?
We have read ahead, but we're not going to go into that.
Exactly. Fingers crossed. And also, there was a nice little Easter egg also for Grant Morrison Doom Patrol fans. When Cliff kind of flips through the Chief's sketchbook about new bodies.
Right. And
there's this one version that probably made you kind of like cock your head and go a little as you looked at it, was with Cliff having legs of a spider.
I thought of Gremlins 2 for some reason.
Yeah, so what that was, if for anybody out there that will watch the episode is like, okay, what's the deal with the spider legs? So that is an homage to Doom Patrol's issue number 39 from Grant Morrison's era in 1990, where through a series of events, Cliff's legs get kind of blown off his body, destroyed, and they get mauled by, and then they get, not blown off, but they get mauled by this demon dog type character. And he ends up, like, the Chief ends up, like, temporarily replacing Cliff's bottom half with these, they were like these giant spiders that were around at the time, too, because they were on this alien planet.
Oh, okay.
So basically it was just like, well, Cliff needs a way to move around again, so
Cool.
Let's just stick him on some giant spider legs, of course, right? Because, hey, it's Doom Patrol, and Doom Patrol is weird.
Exactly. Well, thank you for explaining that for us, Charles, because, like I said, I got the version of the idea of Gremlins 2 where Stripe, drinks the potion and sprouts spider legs. So obviously I had that in mind.
Something else in mind. Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm a huge fan of Gremlins, so that's what I had. I had spider stripe, basically.
Yeah, so basically that was just an Easter egg that I thought I mentioned for anybody wondering what the deal was with that. All right, so we got 3 topics today. Topic number 1, we have to talk right off the bat. Steel and Stone. And feel free to sing along with Cliff's Steel and Stone theme song if you want at this point. love that little dream sequence of Cliff's because I'm a big fan of 70s cop shows and the cheesiness therein. And so obviously I want to talk about Cliff in this segment. I want to talk about Vic. And I thought we could also talk about Roni, who Vic has some very important moments with in this episode. And also Silas Stone, Vic's father, who makes a nice little cameo return, played, of course, by Phil Morris, once again. So what did you make of our little buddy cop episode with Vic and Cliff?
Well, I think it's very sad how enthusiastic Cliff is about this all and how Vic does not want any of it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because I think poor Cliff, he's still getting over, having been kind of rejected by his daughter. And, Robot Man needs some love here. And I think he's trying to look to elsewhere. And also, I think he sees the comparisons, of course, between himself and Cyborg, the fact that they are both, part machine and part man, as it were. And so it almost seems an obvious choice that he would gravitate to Cyborg.
Because Vic is almost like halfway there to becoming Vic, or becoming Cliff.
Yeah.
With being replaced by so many of his body parts by mechanical replacements, prosthetics and whatnot. Now, I think, if you remember in season 1, Cliff did not take too kindly to Vic initially.
Not at all. He kept taking the Mickey out of him, as they would say in the UK.
Right.
Making fun of him and saying, when's Superman coming along, or do you have Batman's phone number, or things of that nature. It's kind of taking pot shots at him.
Right. And, because here he was, this big Justice Leaguer, and Cliff and the rest of the Doom Patrol being this group of misfits. But also, I think Cliff felt a little threatened by Vic because he's young, he's actually still half human, got more advanced parts. He doesn't look like a clanky walking toaster. Very streamlined, essentially like the newer model. So maybe he kind of felt like he was going to be replaced or something, and it was just kind of projecting those insecurities into antagonizing Vic. What do you think?
Kind of like, I guess, the Cyberdyne Systems 101 to T1000 kind of situation.
Exactly.
That's the advanced model.
Although with being much less homicidal, I would guess. But I think now, it shows, here in season 2, we kind of see that, well, maybe Cliff's attitude toward Vic has softened quite a bit. And now he feels like, whoa, hey, this guy, I can maybe hang with this guy. And so he kind of reaches out, and he even tries to, help Vic with romantic advice, which actually works.
Who knew that it would actually work? I was blown away by that.
You were just waiting for this to become a complete disaster, right?
Yeah, because I was expecting Roni to kind of like kind of shut the door in his face. Because I kind of was shaking my head saying, there's no way she'll fall for that.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, Cliff Steele knows what to do when it comes to that. And once again, another one over Ralph Dibny. Ralph Dibny keeps getting worse and worse as we see other people giving life coach advice here.
Right. And, and credit to Cliff. I mean, because he did state up front, look, he tells Vic, look, as many times as I've gotten myself out of trouble with women, trust me on this. I'm an expert at this by now, digging myself out.
I was weaseled my way back in, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. So, and sure enough, it worked. And so, as advertised. But because it worked so well, Cliff kind of finds himself like sitting around in the car, alone, bored. And that's what kind of leads to this great dream sequence where Cliff imagines himself and Vic as 70s cop detectives, Steel and Stone.
And was it cool? It was
so what did you make of that great sequence?
Well, I thought, as you said, such a throwback, of course, to a bygone era, of course, of the way cop shows were done. You and I mentioned off air Starsky and Hutch. which was actually one of the few kind of cop shows we got over here in Italy from the US.
Right.
So that's why, I think I immediately thought of Starsky and Hutch. But I just thought it was just wonderful. Not to mention Robot Man wearing a wig and dressed up like a hooker. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And just obviously the terrible dialogue, like time to take out the trash and this kind of stuff. These terrible punchlines, which were so familiar, of course, and so present in those kind of shows. I thought to myself, they just did a splendid job, and that's why I think it made you want it so badly, because it's such a great love song almost or love letter to the 70s.
Yeah.
And like yourself, I did not live the 70s era, but I'm a big fan of old school TV. And I thought to myself, I would love to see this because it's so out of time and so kind of just different. I definitely would watch even a short series of Steel and Stone just for the heck of it,
Well, see, I'm old enough, and I'm showing my age here. I realize this. Where I'm old enough to remember seeing that kind of stuff as a kid. Because essentially I was before I became a teenager. So I'm thinking when this kind of stuff was going on, like I'm between 8 and 10 years old. And so that kind of stuff is, kind of burned a little bit into my childhood memory. Watching these kinds of shows. It's why I really loved seeing Timothy Dalton, the chief, as the, kind of given the role of the harried and frustrated police captain, just that you get to see him incorporated in that, like he's he's all decked out in 70s attire, and he's kind of looking frustrated with their antics, or, especially Steele's antics. And so it was just a great homage to that kind of that 70s throwback.
Not to mention the music
as
well, and just also I thought was incredible was they got the colors right as well, because the lighting and the colors, of course, was very different from today, and they didn't make it kind of a modernized version. They went way, they did it justice in that sense. They actually did. Everything was typical from the lettering. In fact, I loved the post that you made on social media with the actual poster.
Yeah.
Trying to frame that. I mean, it's like the show that could, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, the title font was very 70s, and just lots of little details that someone like me, especially being a little bit older, definitely appreciated. So I thought that was a lot of fun. It's kind of like something out of a Tarantino movie. Because Tarantino loves that period as well.
Very well said, because especially I think in Death Proof, you get a lot of that.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of that time period that he loves so much. The grittiness, just the seediness of the era, and that definitely came through a little bit. I think it was a lot of fun. So Cliff asked Vic to get some help from Vic's father, Silas, because the chief seems pretty unoccupied and is telling Vic, it may be a few years before I can upgrade your body. And I'm sure Cliff is like, I don't want to wait a few years. I want these upgrades now. So, Vic, can your dad hook me up? So they go to visit him. I think wasn't it on a golf course that they go out to?
Yeah, where Silas, it doesn't break his stride. I mean, the man is working out like there's no tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, he's very fit, right?
I think it could be maybe on the college grounds, maybe. That's what I got the impression of, because you had these kind of young people running around. I don't know whether
possible.
It was university or college grounds, like the that area, I think.
The university.
Like
okay.
campus. I think it was college campus.
It's possible. I wouldn't put it past it. But and it's great once, like I said, to see Phil Morris once again as Silas.
Great, yeah.
And so essentially, Cliff makes this pitch to Silas. Hey, look, this would be a great opportunity for you to show Niles up, right? You want to stick it in his craw, right? So do me a solid here. Help me out. And Silas is like, no, not interested. Like, I don't want to be, like, this is essentially Niles' failure. I don't want to go anywhere near that. And poor Cliff is kind of left hanging. Like, what do I do now? And I'm kind of curious to see what happens to, although I'm betting Silas will come around. And the reason I say that is because, once again, there was a Grant Morrison Doom Patrol storyline.
Okay.
And in the comics, the Chief gets some help from a comics character by the name of Dr. Will Magnus, the creator of the Metal Men.
Okay, yeah, I get that reference.
So you understood that reference. So if you do understand that reference, so essentially, the Metal Men were these DC Comics characters where they were created from like various metals, hence the name Metal Men. And Doc Magnus was essentially their leader / creator. And so Morrison brings in Will Magnus to essentially develop a much more advanced body for Cliff, one that can feel, touch, and then that's something that Cliff is talking about wanting. So I have to wonder, if they don't bring in Will Magnus, I'm guessing Silas will be the one to build this body as a substitute character. That's I'm speculating here, obviously.
It could be interesting to see because seeing how against the idea he is,
right?
Because he almost sees like you were saying what Niles did. I mean, he refers to it as manslaughter at best. So it makes you wonder what will make him turn around unless they introduce this character Will Magnus. Say, for example, Silas calls Vic saying, I won't help you, but I know somebody who might. And then you get, the introduction to Will Magnus. But I really felt bad for Cliff in this case. And I see where Silas is coming from. He has strong ethics, but at the same time,
right,
he didn't really have those ethics when they went to experiment on his own son. So it's kind of like...
Yeah, I know. Well, like once it benefited Silas, because Silas was desperate to save his son's life. And so he brought the Chief in, even though he has these ethical objections to who he was desperate. But now, with the position reversed, Silas kind of feels like, well, I don't have to do this for Niles, for you. This is his problem. Let him sort it out.
So I guess that could be where he's coming from
so
as well.
So maybe either Vic will point out to him, like, hey, look, Niles helped me save me. Why don't you do this for Cliff?
Yeah, return the favor.
Exactly. So we'll kind of see what happens, and obviously I don't know if we'll get to that storyline in this season or not because of the truncated season. But
which we're already very depressed about.
Right, exactly. Because we were kind of commiserating before the podcast that we've only got like 2 new episodes left. I mean, we're kind of like still playing catch up here. We're like 3 weeks behind talking about episodes, but yeah, we only have like 2 more left to watch. And then
it's so good.
It's so good, and then you're like, well, who knows when we're going to get season 3, right? So I guess we better enjoy it while it lasts. Learn a little bit more about Roni in this episode. She kind of, like Vic and Roni were kind of like laying in bed afterwards because once again Vic gets a little sweet loving down by the fire, thanks to Cliff, right? And so afterwards, as they bask in the cyborg afterglow, so Roni tells Vic that she's talking about her scars and how she got them when an IED exploded. And then she says that she worked on a mission for a group called Quorum, whom I'm not familiar with. And supposedly Quorum gave her enhancements and then apparently somehow she screwed up, and then they took the enhancements away. We don't know exactly what happened there.
Yeah.
So what did you
She's
make of what did you make of that?
I wonder whether she's kind of redacting the story a little bit, or obviously she's just sharing the parts that she wants to.
Right.
But you know what? It is an interesting callback to what you mentioned, in a couple episodes back about the fact that there is, should we say, a dark cyborg or an anti-cyborg, if you will, because of course Roni in the comics is a male character who turns out to become a dark version of Cyborg. So it might be a callback to that.
Yeah.
And
So do you think Roni is manipulating Vic to
I
get
don't know.
to get some get her enhancements back? Maybe.
No, I don't know whether she's manipulating him, but you can tell that the way she talks about it, it seems like, she's kind of a little, obviously she's upset that she lost because I think she feels almost more vulnerable, obviously, now, before she had the powers and everything else. And you can sort of see that in the way she talks about it. And like I said, it makes you wonder how much of the story she's actually giving Vic. But also maybe because she's afraid of losing him at this point. Because unlike the first time they slept together, she was all ready to get up and get dressed and leave. Here she's actually happy to stay. So maybe she's thinking to herself, I've got a good thing here. I don't want to jinx it.
Well, especially when Vic passes her little test, essentially giving him the files on her, and then seeing if he came back after that.
Yeah, so that's why I think maybe she feels this guy could be the one, or maybe he's worth hanging on to.
Right.
So she's maybe afraid to divulge further information that might push him away. I don't think she has an evil agenda. I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem to me like she has an evil agenda. I think she really wants to find somebody she belongs with.
Right.
So maybe she's been alone for too long and is happy to find somebody who understands her, as it will, if you will, or somebody who gets her for what she is.
Well, and I'm sure Vic is kind of looking for the same thing from her.
Yeah.
So, the question is whether her secrets that she's keeping from Vic are going to haunt them later on in some way.
If TV shows and movies have taught us anything,
right.
It tends to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't set that stuff up for a reason unless they intended to pay it off, I'm guessing.
It's not going to be a throwaway thing. You definitely know that it's going to come, but it's going to resurface eventually.
Yeah, they introduced it for a reason, I think. So we'll see what happens. Anything else about Vic or Roni or Cliff?
I was just happy to see, Vic, because we talked about this, getting something more to do in this season.
Yeah.
Because, the previous season we kind of saw him as no more of the token superhero, if you will, kind of bring you the familiar face that folks might know. Here they're actually giving him a story arc, or they're giving him more of an arc. And I really like that. Not to mention, of course, the character of Roni is actually an interesting one to follow and is splendidly played. And Cliff, I just feel bad for him because he just can't get a break. He just wants something, you want something good to happen to poor Robot Man and get rid of that kind of cloud that's hanging over his head. I just feel so bad for him.
But he's so much fun when he's griping about stuff. So
I suppose, yes, if he was in a happy place, we'd probably lose that. So There is that as well.
Yeah. Certainly not as many F-bombs if he was happier. So, all right, let's move on. Topic number 2. Let's talk about Rita and Larry.
Okay.
And since we kind of discussed, too, about shuffling the discussion topic order a little bit. So Rita decides, well, okay, I want to go do some community theater. And so she approaches a new character that's introduced named Micki Harris, who is this elderly woman that works as a manager at a home garden center. And essentially she has to kind of audition right there in the home and garden center for Micki. And it doesn't go well.
No.
But as we find out, Wow. Well, after that, she ends up going off with Larry and going on his storyline in this episode where he goes back to his family home, and we get to see him with his son Paul and his son's son and his son's grandson. Or I mean, so essentially
Three
it's like
generations.
three generations of trainers here. Yeah, exactly. No, actually four, if you think about
four,
it.
if you count.
Yes, if you're counting Larry. So Larry, Paul, Dex, and the son, what was it? Toby. So
Toby, yeah, so 4 generations of trainers.
yes, exactly. So that's a lot of trainers, right? So that's also a good chunk of this episode. So, what did you make? What did you think of Rita helping Larry and encouraging him to go reach out to Paul and help him with this idea of like, well, you go out there and we want to clean Larry's other son, the one that died, his house out.
I appreciate
the attempt at bonding there. What did you think of that?
I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, granted, we will get to it, but it has a terrible turn, and we actually called this one as well. Well, when it comes to that, but which I remember you actually mentioned that you were very upset about that because you and I discussed this off air before talking about this episode. But before we get to that, I really, because also Larry is looking for some connection here because once again, he is the kind of misunderstood person, and he feels he can't talk to anyone. And we're coming off an episode where he was kind of dancing around, and then he could have possibly had somebody to shall we say take him home, as it were, but it didn't happen because the fact that he said, if I take my bandages off. So he's dealing with that, dealing with the fact that he is kind of excluded, and while everybody's partying, he's the guy in the kitchen, if you will. So yes. That's the situation, and. So I think he wants to really bond, and after having met Paul at the funeral, he really wants to pursue it. I think he wants to make up for his mistakes, because remember, of course, the negative spirit was the one who brought this all about, saying,
urging him on, yeah.
You kind of have to patch up your previous mistakes, and so he wants to make right on his previous mistakes, which I think is a long-reaching theme throughout this show of wanting to patch up and atone for what you've done, especially in this season. Between Danny, the Chief, and Larry, it is very much an overreaching theme. I really liked it, and it was very heartwarming to see him kind of, picking up Gary's stuff and seeing the spaceship again and saying it was actually perfect. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment, and I can see why Larry wanted to do that and just make good on what he had done, under his mistakes. What about you, Charles? What do you think?
No, I think you're absolutely right that the central theme of this show is about trying to atone for past mistakes and that struggle to do that. Because as we've seen throughout these 2 seasons, the members of the Doom Patrol are very extremely flawed characters, obviously. They've made a lot of mistakes throughout their lives. Some more than others, some extremely serious, and including, right up to the Chief, who's ultimately responsible for creating the Doom Patrol and that mistake. So it feels like it's this attempt at atonement, and poor Larry, who is just burdened with all kinds of guilt, self-loathing, self-hatred. Is making an effort here at like you said, at the negative spirit's urging. And so, he reaches out to Paul and, gets him a chance to connect to a grandson and a great-grandson that he's never met before here. And, so it was great to see him get that opportunity. And he does kind of do a little bonding. But it also, it makes him feel a little bit secure enough to admit some of his mistakes and it's things that he's hidden. He talks about, like, when you brought up the fighter jet that Paul's brother made, and Larry kind of, just angrily snapped at because it wasn't perfect. And Larry makes that admission. I thought it was a good moment for him that, well, I used to be an asshole, and you kind of hear the regret in his voice of what he did to his son, and now he has come to realize how horrible his treatment of his kids were. And then you see other little things, like with finding the Russian dolls, like I mentioned earlier, and then also just he finally comes out and admits to Paul that he's gay, which is a huge admission.
Yeah.
Because that's something he never admitted to his wife.
That's right. Even though he mentioned that she probably realized,
right? But he never had the guts to actually say the words. Yeah, and so now he feels, now he's kind of through everything that's gone on, his experiences and his personal growth, without him even realizing it, he feels comfortable enough to tell his son and come out to him. So I thought that was a big moment for Larry as well.
Oh, it was. And the fact that, when he actually takes that piece of cloth saying this belonged to, my lover.
Right.
It's huge. Granted, Paul does not take it the best way. I mean, I can understand. I mean, to a certain extent, I can understand it must be shocking if you find out years later that your father was actually gay and it was a whole big kind of thing. But, and then we know, of course, that at the end.
Well, this is on top. This is on top of Larry hiding the fact that he was actually alive.
Yeah, that Larry kind of being completely absent in their lives, and when he possibly could have reached out way before now, and he did it because of the fact that the negative spirit kind of urged him to do so. Because maybe if the negative spirit had not urged him to do so, he might have just kind of like, okay, that was part of my life. I'm not going to readdress it ever again.
Yeah,
so
and that's kind of Larry's mentality, which is probably why the negative spirit urged him. He's like, look, you're not going to deal with this? Fine. Well, I'm going to make you deal with this. And unfortunately, though, Larry reaching out to Paul, it goes horribly wrong in this episode. Because turns out Paul is angrier than he let on. A lot angrier. And to the point where he rats on Larry. He calls up the government, the Bureau of Normalcy. Makes a return with their hired goon squad to essentially take Larry in. And it goes wrong. Dex ends up getting shot in the process. And it's basically like the Larry's nightmare come true right here. Here he was trying to hide out, stay away from the Bureau of Normalcy and so that his kids can have peace. And the moment that he tries to reach out to them, they're right back in it once again. And it all goes wrong. And thankfully, though, for Larry, Rita's there to help him. But obviously, I think the damage is done, and the lack of trust is there now.
Oh, yes, very much so. I mean, and I actually recall you mentioning to me off air that you were so upset that this is where they went with it. Because, when I'd mentioned the fact that the camera kind of stayed on that look that Paul was giving Larry.
Right.
And then we got this, because we'd watched ahead and stuff. And you told me, it's like, I'm kind of upset that they went with it that way. That they ended up becoming the fact that Paul was actually looking at Larry that way because he was about ready to make a phone call to the Bureau of Normalcy. And once again, I just felt so bad for Larry. It's like Cliff is going through so much rubbish, and as is Larry, and now it's just like the nth nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Because you think to yourself, what must his self-esteem be like at this point?
Oh, I'm sure it's completely shredded. And just, you feel so bad for Larry because the moment he starts feeling a little bit better about himself and is making those efforts to reach out, once again, he puts his hand too close to the fire and gets burned. Once again. And so it's another setback. And you wonder what it's going to take for him to trust again.
Because his character is all about being in the closet in multiple senses.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just it's a great. I mean, his homosexuality is such a metaphor for just how he's just hiding himself, who he really is.
And the fact that he doesn't want to address his past either.
Yeah.
He's constantly living in the closet, literally.
Yeah. And it doesn't take much to drive him right back in there because of again, that lack of trust and that lack of self-confidence in who he is, self-esteem.
I just thought it was terrible that Paul turned on him that way. It just was really, really sad, but I suppose at the same time it might almost be a commentary on people maybe not ready to accept what is different from them, or it just comes from a place of resentment.
Yeah. And it was just very disappointing, but it is what it is, and now Larry's going to have to try to cope with this, and we'll see what happens. So,
but not to mention Rita pulls a great defense there of the little boy. When she kind of shields him with her body, so she is able to do that.
She does a bit of it. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. She finally gets to be a bit of a superhero in that regard.
Yeah.
So she's making her little progress too, without even realizing it. And because remember, obviously, when we talked about Rita introduced to her, she was so reluctant to get involved, and she made a point of like bringing Larry into that whole mindset. Like, we're the two that don't get involved, but here they are getting involved deliberately.
Very much.
So it shows how much they've come. So just thought that was interesting to bring up.
I totally agree with you. And to go back to Rita, I love the fact that this audition means so much to her. It reminds me of little things that we all do in our lives of.
Right.
It's, community theatre. Obviously, you're not auditioning for Cecil B. DeMille or Steven Spielberg or what have you. But it just means so much to her. And I think maybe, everybody's kind of been there at some point where everybody's like, it's just a kind of little thing, but it means the world to you because you're just so passionate about that particular thing. And you see how much she really wants to get back in the game because she lives and breathes acting. And so she's happy even to just be part of community theatre, to just kind of relive almost her glory days in a smaller way.
Yeah, I mean, Rita feels like she had something to prove here.
The whole mother deal.
Exactly, because she makes this one comment after Micki calls her back and says, well, hey, everybody, like half the cast got mono, so can you come in and do this part? And Rita is so ecstatic. And then she makes this comment like, look, Mother, I did it myself, or something to that effect. So, because her, and this is what it seems like is a theme for her in this season, is that a lot of her insecurities and self-esteem problems come from the fact that of her mother, and that the only reason she became an actress was because her mother slept with producers and directors.
Yeah, she never earned anything on pure talent. It was kind of almost given to her through sexual transactions.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially she feels like, well, I guess I wasn't good enough. And we find out that trauma, that childhood trauma of seeing her mother and realizing, well, I'm not talented. It's because my mother got me these parts. So here she's trying to say, look, it may be only community theater, but I did it without you.
And at the same time, I also got a little bit of Norman Bates and his mother kind of thing, because it's kind of like,
Well, I hope not.
I was just waiting for kind of like the shadow of the house, like kind of like seeing, the Bates Motel, as it were, and going, you hear that, Mother? I made it, kind of thing. Like Skinner does in The Simpsons. There's Mother watching me now.
I love the way that you always go back to a horror reference. So that kind of tells me something about you.
Certain films have had significant impact on yours truly.
I can nothing wrong with that. I get it. So So here's hoping that Rita Farr does not have her mother's desiccated body hidden away in a room somewhere inside Doom Manor.
Hopefully not.
Fingers crossed, because that would be kind of creepy. But, yeah. And going a little bit too Norman Bates, I think. All right. Topic number 3, unless you had anything else about Reed and Larry you want to talk about.
No, I'm good.
All right, so let's move on. This is the big one for this episode.
Yes, indeed.
So let's talk Niles, as Nick rubs his hands eagerly. Yay! So we're going to talk Niles, Jane, Dorothy, and the Candlemaker. So we talked a little bit about this, that the team up you never expected to see happen, but once it happened, you could kind of see it work. We got to see Baby Doll, Jane's persona, Baby Doll, paired with Dorothy. Jane's childlike persona paired with Dorothy, who is old enough not to be a child by several decades, but likes to act like a child and still thinks of herself as a child. And so, pretty interesting mix, but that mix leads to some very horrible repercussions.
It does.
And so I'm very curious about your thoughts about this development, sir.
Well, I think it was the pair up you thought you never needed, but you definitely, I think, is what you wanted. Because I felt just like Niles when I saw these two kind of gallivanting around, because that smile on his face was actually beautiful. The fact that, because he sees that his daughter is happy, she's found a companion, as it were. Granted, it'll probably be temporary, but He says at least she's finding happiness. Because it was just lovely to see them frolic around and putting stickers on Cliff and
Vic. Yeah. And Vic complaining like, well, it's kind of hard to get the puffy ones off.
I just thought it was very endearing. It was beautiful, and Diane Guerrero, kudos to her for doing such a wonderful job of playing, this
Baby doll,
young child.
Yeah, I mean, there was the scene where Diane Guerrero as Baby Doll leaps into the chief's lap.
That's the one I was referring to. Yeah.
And I'm like, on one hand, it's kind of creepy to watch.
That's what I thought. Am I feeling like an old lech watching this?
Right.
Because it's kind of like Gigi all over again.
Yeah, you're kind of like, should I be watching this right now? Am I going to get are the authorities going to come in and bust me for watching this? But the performance in that, just her. I mean, it's incredible the way Diane Guerrero can just to do that. I mean, I can't even, it blows my mind that here she is, an adult woman, just able to capture that childlike attitude so well. And do it so.
I forgot that Diane Guerrero was on screen. Literally, I thought we have a child here on screen.
Yeah, it was just, it's amazing. So, and then when you see her as Baby Doll interacting with Dorothy, and the two of them, they're playing games, like you said, they're putting stickers on Cliff and Vic, and you can kind of see why Niles did this. The good intentions, but unfortunately, we know what the road to hell was paved with.
Of course.
And, so I don't really blame Niles here, because he was trying to, hey, my daughter needs a friend.
Yeah, find her a playmate.
Yeah, exactly. And Baby Doll, I think it would work. So let's find out. Maybe Jane would get something out of it. So I can't really fault him for it, but unfortunately, just because there's this added dimension to both who those characters are, Dorothy with the Candlemaker and Jane with her other personas, especially now fighting for control within her, it ultimately leads to disaster.
Yeah, well, it all sparks from that famous episode, of course, where they talk about Dorothy's imaginary friends. And, of course, Dorothy perceives Baby Doll as being rude because she kind of reaches out and touches the creature's snout.
Manny, yeah, the Wendigo creature, and
Exactly.
and because Dorothy was so insistent, like you have to be polite, and apparently Manny got spooked or something, and this kind of sets off Dorothy's dark side. Like you weren't polite, and she starts to get a bit scarier here, and things kind of escalate from there.
And we know of somebody else who likes to eat rude people, and politeness is everything too.
Yes, a certain Dr. Hannibal Lecter, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. A reference to a Dr. Lecter is purely coincidental. but
we touch on Psycho, we touch on Silence of the Lambs. We want to throw in a Hellraiser reference, or
we'll get there eventually.
We're kind of doing Wishmaster with the Candlemaker, so like you said.
That's right. But no, I just thought it would. Well, I mean, because look, in Dorothy's defense, Baby Doll wasn't exactly polite when she promised she would be, because she's kind of reaching up. But I guess the childhood excitedness of seeing this creature larger than life, like you want to kind of touch it and everything because it looks cuddly and fuzzy, etc. But and the fact that Dorothy, I think, wanted to obviously play a practical joke on her, which goes horribly wrong because she just wants to scare her. When she says, "Let's play hide and seek," and she's like, "Okay, we're just gonna freak her out, so that'll learn her for doing me wrong."
Right.
But obviously, then it just goes terribly sideways, and the Candlemaker plays into that dark side, and that's that image when Dorothy once again puts her palm out, and you see the candle come out. That would make for a great poster, I think, because it's just like you're seeing the dark side, because Dorothy's expression changes. She's not in a place of danger. It's actual payback. And that's where you get the fact that she's gone totally psycho.
Yeah, I mean, because, Baby Doll ends up killing Manny.
Yeah.
Which upsets Dorothy, understandably. And, I forget what it was. No, I remember what it was. Baby Doll turned into Flaming Katie.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Flaming Katie killed Manny. So Dorothy that act really sets things off, because remember Baby Doll was upset because of how that hide and seek game played. That they were threatening to tell the chief on the other. And it kind of escalated from there, and then Manny dies, and so Dorothy at this point is now wanting revenge for Manny.
Yes, retaliation. I suppose.
And the Candlemaker's right there, like I've talked about, how he's been steadily manipulating Dorothy throughout this, and the Candlemaker's going, "See, you can't trust her. She killed Manny. So just make a wish, and I'll take care of your problem." And she does. The very, very thing that the chief has been telling her all along, don't do, she does. And as a result, the Candlemaker goes into the underground, which I thought was a very interesting visual to see, and ends up killing Baby Doll and Flaming Katie. So we have the casualty list here is one of Dorothy's imaginary friends, two of Jane's personas, now dead at the hand. So it's almost like a Godfather thing, you kill one guy, I take. No, it was the Untouchables. That's right, the Untouchables with Sean Connery. They kill one of ours, we put two of theirs in the morgue, that kind of thing. And so the escalation here. And we're left with the Candlemaker kind of looming over the others, threatening, looking like something else is going to go horribly wrong before we cut to black, and the episode ends. So essentially the Candlemaker is out. He's free now that Dorothy made that wish. We'll see.
I wonder, but what I think is amazing is the fact that the Candlemaker can literally go anywhere.
Right.
That's what I think is really adds to the creepiness and the
that is so
how
powerful. That is so
how
powerful.
threatening that he can transcend worlds.
Right.
You know, even mental constructs. He can actually go into those. That I think is incredible, and it definitely adds the threat to the fact that he can just materialize wherever he so pleases.
And obviously that's going to cause problems for Jane because, hey, 2 of her personas have been killed, 2 of her alters, and obviously the others aren't going to react to that very well either. So now we have to see the fallout from all this.
Yep. And it's a big one.
It's a big one. So that the level has been raised here. And we'll see how it plays out. But a big episode, really.
I have a question for you, Charles. Granted, We're not done yet with this season.
Yes.
But if you were to compare, for what we've got right now, the Candlemaker to Mr. Nobody, granted they're 2 very different villains, but which do you prefer so far? I know it's a very loaded question.
It is, but I mean, because I like them both for different reasons. I love Mr. Nobody because of Alan Tudyk and his comedic timing, the fourth wall breaking, because I'm a huge fan of breaking the fourth wall as a storytelling device. I've fell in love with it with the 80s television series Moonlighting that starred Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd. I don't know if you've seen it, but
I did. Yes. Yeah, I saw you were going with that one.
Yeah, so I love that. And then when you have the Candlemaker, it's much more in a classic horror vein because you have this supremely powerful creature, and the question is, well, is the team going to be able to stop it? It's a much more serious threat than Mr. Nobody, but that's good because he's not just a Mr. Nobody rehash either. So I kind of like, because we don't want just another Mr. Nobody, and so it kind of and the Candlemaker, knowing what I know about the Candlemaker from reading Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol, I knew how cool this villain could be, and I'm really glad to be seeing that here in season 2. So, like I said, I like them both for different reasons.
Well, as always, your answer is incredibly diplomatic, and so I thank you because I was just thinking about it myself.
I know that's non-committal, but on my part, but
well, you know what? As I said,
I like both. Is that okay? Can I like both?
There's nothing wrong with being diplomatic. I think.
Yeah. We could probably use a lot more of that in today's society right now, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Any reference to real world events is purely coincidental here as well.
Right.
But
we'll put that in the disclaimer at the end of the show.
That's right. Because to touch up on your points there about these 2 different villains, I guess we could also add that maybe the Candlemaker's more textbook villain, if you will, whereas obviously Mr. Nobody was different. But I love the fact that there's this variety.
So let me flip the question back on you then. Which one do you like better?
Okay, you know what? As much as I love Mr. Nobody, I actually might prefer the Candlemaker.
Is that because you're a horror fan and he's kind of more in that classic horror vein? A little bit?
It could be, or maybe just because, I think the design and the menace and... I mean, I love this show for not being your straightforward textbook superhero show. I love it for that reason.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm also a big fan of classic villains, as in the big menace, as it were.
The big bad, yeah.
Who might be a little bit more complex. I love Thanos, for example. That's why I love Thanos so much, because he's a complex villain in the MCU. I like the Candlemaker because, yes, he is your more textbook villain, but he is so multi-layered. He's not just, throw stuff at him and you'll destroy him. He pervades every single world. And I think the fact that he's the product of the mind Because the mind is something that's always fascinated me greatly. That's why I always wanted to take psychology as a second course for college, because the human mind is fascinating me so much.
Yes.
I love the fact that he's a projection of the mind. Hence why, thanks to you, I'm getting into David Lynch as well, because I love those mind trips.
Well,
so
that's perfect, right? Exactly. You don't get mind trippier than David Lynch.
And I think David Lynch could actually have so much fun with the Candlemaker if given the chance.
Oh yeah, definitely. The Candlemaker is definitely that kind of Lynch type supernatural villain. I think in a lot of ways.
And it could be that reason that I'm so in love with him right now, because I'm on a David Lynch kind of X-Files kind of trip. So it could naturally influence me. Yeah. It could be.
So you enjoy him because he's the Candlemaker because he's more of a psychological villain.
Yeah, psychological and supernatural at the same time.
And I think he's also a little bit Machiavellian.
Yes.
As well, because especially with his manipulations. And the way he keeps kind of gaslighting Dorothy a little bit.
And the fact that he just is, biding his time, waiting for the right moment, and then he's that whisper in your ear, as it were. That,
the devil on your shoulder, so to speak. Yeah.
I think that is actually what he kind of represents, is that we all have our own candle makers, and it's up to us to listen to them when it comes to making the wish or not.
Yeah. So Dorothy kind of made a tactical error, and we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, because you wonder what the rest of the underground is going to think about it.
Oh yeah, and we've seen some episodes since then, so we have kind of an idea.
Yeah.
But we'll talk more later on that one. All right. So anything else about this episode that we didn't cover?
No, I think we covered pretty much all the ground that needed to be covered. I so enjoyed this episode. It's such a strong season, and I've actually seen that sort of the ratings of folks across the board reflect our thoughts too. And I'm glad it's being so well received, and I hope it lays the grounds for a third season.
Yeah, I know that I was reading an article today that Doom Patrol is one of HBO Max's top-rated series.
Yeah,
because the original. So, fingers crossed that means season 3 is coming eventually. So, hopefully,
which is certainly a good thing.
It's certainly at least a positive sign, at least.
I'm very happy with it. Obviously, the reverse side of the coin is if you do get more seasons, you just hope the show doesn't get complacent.
Right. But, season 2, they kept the same writers from season 1. So, obviously...
Which makes perfect sense.
And as long as that writing team stays together, I'd say the shows will be okay, I'm guessing. The question will be, where do they go from the Candlemaker? So, will we get the return of Mr. Nobody, do you think? Maybe we'll get the Brotherhood of Dada, I'm hoping for.
Well, you know what? You've called quite a few appearances, so who knows?
Who knows? We'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of ways they can go, and they've introduced so many different concepts on the show. They could go all kinds of directions. All right. Favorite quotes. Do you have any favorite quotes for this episode?
I have a few. I just, when it comes to the quotes, well, first off, one that I loved was when Vic has that nightmare of Roni with, of course, the weapons and stuff, and he wakes up, and Cliff is like, sorry to disturb your night terror. And Vic's like, it wasn't a night terror. Spooky wet dream, then. That was hilarious. Then the other one that I've got is Cliff and Vic, once again, what's the plan? Sandwiches. And Vic, we were supposed to go for subs when I stood her up, and so I figured I'd get these as a kind gesture, better late than never, right? And Cliff's like, smooth as a sandpaper strap-on, out the window. And finally, I've got Roni and Vic. Roni to Vic, I had this whole plan laid out in case you asked me out again. I was going to be all sweet and be all like, sure, I'd love to. And then ditch your ass. And Vic's like, okay, so what happened? And Roni, you asked.
Exactly.
Those are my
those are good. I liked the Chief with Jane, where he says, are you experiencing any withdrawal symptoms? And she replies, is being a pathetic piece of shit withdrawal symptoms? Or a withdrawal symptoms, excuse me. Cliff with Vic, I mentioned this earlier, they put stickers on us, and Vic is like, Oh, I know. And the puffy ones are hard to get off. That was good. And then Vic with Cliff, kind of in the Steel and Stone little montage, or the little sequence there, where Vic says, "Next time you can hide in the garbage, and I'll wear the wig." And Cliff is like, "Please, we know who's prettiest."
Love it.
So yeah, I love that stuff. What's your rating?
I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10 wigs.
All right. We are in sync.
Ooh.
So I'm giving this one 8.5 out of 10. Fingers severed by a car door.
Oh yes, there was also that which
we didn't talk about, but yes.
Cliff pockets a finger.
Yeah, because while Vic is inside with Roni, I'll just leave it there. Cliff is obviously bored, and he notices a couple of guys trying to break into a car that's nearby in the parking lot. So he goes to confront them, and they have a little scuffle as they're getting the car door open, and Cliff kind of slams the car door and severs the finger of one of the thieves. And then, to make matters worse, Cliff pockets the finger and is kind of looking at it like, "I'm going to take this home," and keeps it as a little memento or something. So we'll see more of that finger later on.
We will, yeah. I mean, it's just, that doesn't, blood and guts and stuff doesn't faze me, but yeah,
right.
To walk around with a severed finger, it's like, that thing's going to start smelling after a while.
Right. Well, I mean, doesn't he put it in the fridge later on? I don't know. I forget.
I know, but already in the pocket like that.
Yeah.
That's just ooh.
So you could just call it Mr. Finger. "Hi, I'm Mr. Finger. How you doing?"
There you go, exactly. Oh, man. But yeah, and then steel, baby. I love that.
Yeah, go like, "F you, Chief."
You know what? It's a shame it wasn't the middle finger. You'd hoped it would be.
You would think with Cliff, right?
It was a perfect opportunity.
I was thinking that exact same thing, that they could make a joke about, like, giving somebody the finger, and nope, missed opportunity as far as I'm concerned. It was an index finger, so, guys, I don't know. You had it right. It was right there, and they didn't grab that.
Empty net goal, people. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't have any Titans Tower news, but I do have a quick little bit of feedback from Holly Mack.
Oh, hey, Holly.
So, Holly was kind enough to write in.
We had a great time with her talking Sex Patrol last time.
Exactly. She was fantastic and is always welcome back. So, Holly, once again, I'm going to extend the offer. So, whenever you can slip away from the Five-ish Fangirls podcast.
When Rachel's not looking.
Exactly. Kind of distract her with some shiny keys or something, and then you can race on back here. We'd be more than happy to have you. So she writes in about Finger Patrol saying, "Hey, Charles and Nick." Hey, Holly. "Talk about an interesting episode. Vic and Cliff getting some bonding time in. Larry and Paul having a talk, and then Paul turning Larry in. Boo. Dorothy and Baby Doll trying to become friends, and Jane not being allowed to be in control. Baby Doll also trying to fill Dorothy in on the truth as to how exactly her father is." That was something we didn't talk about either, that Baby Doll kind of laid that, about the chief being a horrible person on Dorothy, and that's one of the things that upset her, I think.
Yeah.
And escalated the situation.
Kind of maybe also childish retaliation, obviously being a kid. She's like,
Taunting.
"Your dad's a bad man."
Yeah, exactly. "Your dad created the Doom Patrol." That kind of thing. Going to be interesting to see how things play out from here on out. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. So thank you, Holly. Great to hear from you as always. So if you want to be like Holly, we'd love to hear from you. Love to know what you guys' thoughts are on Doom Patrol Season 2, or thoughts on how Nick and I are doing, or just what your hopes are for what is going to be the truncated season 2 finale coming up. So love to hear from you. So drop us a line at TitanTalkCast@gmail.com. That's TitanTalkCast@gmail.com. Love to hear from you, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at TitanTalkCast, or on Facebook, Titan Talk, the Titans Podcast. We would, again, love it if you liked and follow us, help to grow our community, and for anybody that, if you enjoy what we do, please please share our links and help spread the word, because we'd love to obviously bring in new listeners and grow our podcast. So we'd love to hear from you. Nick, how about you? Where can they reach you?
Well, first off, I want to say, thank you to everybody who has liked and supported the show thus far. I actually noticed, a couple more follows and likes here and there, so I really appreciate those, folks for doing that on social media. I really appreciate any support, for sure. I mean, we have a blast doing this, and we appreciate you guys following along with us. When it comes to me outside of this great podcast, for you country music lovers, I host the Whiskey and Cigarettes show, where we play traditional country, today's country, and everything else in between. For more about that, you can, and where to tune in, you can visit our website. That's whiskeyandcigarettesshow.com. When it comes to podcast land, when I can't be found traipsing around Doom Manor, if superhero movies are your speed, you can find me hosting the Happiness in Darkness podcast, where we discuss superhero movies from Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image, and more. If you'd like to join me on there and discuss a superhero movie of your choice, feel free to send me an email at happinessanddarknesshow@gmail.com. We'll supply you with a list of films left to cover. We are also on social media. On Facebook, you can find us as Happiness and Darkness, Twitter, High Darkness Pod, or on Instagram under Hin Darkness. We recently released our latest review of Iron Man 2 with John Takis and John Yanchek. Coming up will be our review of Superman 2 with Zan Sprouse and a special guest. And speaking of Zan Sprouse, our latest project, Gold Standard, the Oscars Movie Podcast, where with of course, Zan and Rachel, we're reviewing all the movies that won the Oscar for Best Picture in chronological order from 1927's Wings to the present day. Thursday, August 6th, we'll be discussing the 5th film to win Best Picture, which will be Grand Hotel. Should any listeners wish to join us for that, you can email us at goldstandardoscars@gmail.com, or for thoughts about that movie, also goldstandardoscars@gmail.com. We really appreciate, of course, you guys following and, of course, sending in emails and all that good stuff. What about you, Charles?
Well, as for me, you can reach me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, or Facebook, Charles Skaggs in Harriet, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. Where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Titan Talk, including Titans, Doom Patrol, any kind of comic book sci-fi news, comic book TV show news of my other podcasts for the Southgate Media Group, including the Phantom Zone podcast they do with Jesse Jackson, where right now we're talking Stargirl Season 1, having a blast with that. Going to be wrapping that up in a few episodes, and then we'll have to see what Jesse's in the mood to talk about. Fingers crossed. And then Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where a certain DJ Nick will be joining me this very week as we talk Vincent and the Doctor, which is a classic from the Matt Smith era. Gives that big, we're going to give that one a big chef's kiss. Mwah. And then Magnifique. And say Magnifique, exactly. And then we're going to be joined by Martha Southgate, who's going to be making her very first appearance on Next Stop Everywhere. So that should be a lot of fun. Hope everybody checks that out. And then, of course, Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast, where I finally get to talk to Zan Sprouse after Nick gets done with her. Because he's like, I'm going to have her on Happiness and Darkness. I'm going to have her on Gold Standard. So, he's stealing my co-host. Not that I'm bitter or anything. No, I'm not. I'm just teasing. But yeah, whereas Zan and I on Ghost with Twin Peaks podcast, obviously we talk Twin Peaks, and we also talk a lot of David Lynch, whom Nick and I were talking about earlier today. And hope everybody checks that out, as this week we're going to be recording our Criterion Collection review of the Blu-ray, the Criterion Blu-ray release of 2001's Mulholland Drive, directed by, of course, David Lynch. So, going to have a lot of fun with that as we do our big deep dive into the special features. And been watching a lot of documentaries on that, and should be a very interesting discussion, especially if you're a film geek. So I think you'll enjoy it, and I hope everybody checks that out. And otherwise, come on back next time on Titan Talk, episode 56. We're going to be talking Space Patrol. Yes, I have to kind of say it like that, I guess, right? As we're introduced to another DC Comics character, another Doom Patrol member from the comics, by the name of Valentina Vostok. So, who in the comics is Negative Woman. So, we're going to have a lot of fun talking about that. And yes, I'll probably have some trivia about it. So, consider yourselves warned, okay? And, Nick, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Well, no, first off, I definitely want to of course, couple that with, folks, definitely check out all the wonderful projects that Charles has out there because they are fantastic. I've actually gone back to listening to the Ghostwood early episodes from 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
When we're babies. We're babies at that time.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it's just hours and hours of entertainment. Of course, then definitely all the other podcasts he mentioned from Next Stop Everywhere and all the great other shows that he does. Other than that, it's always such a joy to do this with you, Charles. Of course, I thank our listeners for tuning in and their support as always, and can't wait to discuss Space Patrol. I actually might have a soundbite for that one next time.
Ooh, excellent. I'm all for that. So, Nick, I'm having a ball talking this with you. I'm really enjoying what we do, and I'm going to be kind of let down that, once we start wrapping this up, because, hey, Space Patrol is episode 6 of 9, so we're only going to, after next week, we're only going to have like 3 more episodes to go.
It's going to be terribly depressing.
But a little lighter on our schedules, I'm sure, though, so that'll make things a little easier. But, at least we had these 9 episodes to share with everybody else. So really appreciate you guys listening. Please share our links around if you would. Follow us, like us, and then come right on back next time for episode 56 of Titan Talk as we talk Space Patrol right here on Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Ciao.